The third official Smash Ultimate tier list by Lumirank is out, and I wanted to take a look to see who the biggest winners and losers were from just a year ago. In my opinion, these are actually pretty crazy. You have to keep in mind that this game has stopped receiving patches for a few years now, so seeing how drastically some of these characters are moving in such a short amount of time just goes to show you that we can never really be too sure how strong any character really is. If you don't know, these tier lists are created by getting the opinions of top players from all around the world and compiling them together. So it isn't the list of one individual ranking the characters, but a combination of the opinions of many great players. Before we get into it, I'd appreciate it if you could hit that sub button, as I'll have much more Smash content coming up, and I've recently made quite a few Smash related videos that you may like. Check them out. Anyway, so let's get right into it with the biggest losers. The biggest fallout from the last tier list was actually Marth, who went down 16 spots. Now, to me, this is pretty crazy. I don't want to convince you that Marth is a great character. Hell, he might not even be a good character. But to see him this low, like almost in the bottom 10, is insane to me. I truly believe that he's one of those characters, again, he's not great, but we'll never really see how good he can be, because if you are a player who can reach, a high level with Marth, you're not going to pick him. You're going to pick something like Cloud or Corrin or Aegis, Roy, whatever. There are just so many better sword characters, even characters like Joker, who, he's not really a sword character, but he kind of plays that controlled Fundy style too. I mean, until Arsene pops, But yeah, I really believe that he's better than this. Again, not by a crazy amount, but to me, moving down this much is insane. I really believe it's just a matter of not seeing the character, because again, who's going to pick him? If you really cared about winning, you'd pick just a better option. But I guess if you're just that obsolete that you can just be replaced by so many good characters, I guess that means you deserve to be pretty low on the list. In a vacuum, however, I don't agree with this one, but it is what it is. It is what it is. And our next biggest fall off is Sheik, who went down 14 placements. In the last tier list, Sheik was a B+ character, almost slipping into that A tier, and now she's just falling to the bottom of the B. Well, I mean, she's not the bottom, but she's getting there. Going down 14 placement is quite a bit. Again, the second biggest fall off in 1 year. This one is also crazy to me because Sheik is a hard character to kind of gauge. She's one of those characters that if you believe she was played perfectly, she might just never lose neutral against so many matchups and have these really crazy confirms. And that's all great on paper, but when it comes down to it, a lot of these things just don't pan out. She feels riskier to play because she's relatively light and difficult to play. You might find yourself just losing games. So she's a hard character to pin down, but it's insane to me that she's going down. I would expect her to kind of trickle up, as she's supposed to be like a technical character who gets better the more, quote unquote, perfectly you play. So I thought over time she'd go up. This could be just a matter of people not showing up as much as they used to with Sheik, or maybe people's opinion of her just fell. Either way, I'm quite surprised with Sheik being the second biggest loser of this tier list. And honestly, I hope that this doesn't continue. If Smash Ultimate lasts another year, which, honestly, I also hope that doesn't even happen. I do hope she kind of gets more spotlight. She's a character I love playing myself every time I play any Smash game, and I love watching her as well. Our next biggest losers is a three-way tie. We have Sephiroth, who moved down 12 placements. This is another sad one for me. Sephiroth's a character I love to play myself. I'm not that surprised he's moving down. He feels like a character who has very weaknesses, and I feel like they'll get exposed the more and more people play him. He is also another character where I feel like you have to really love the guy to really want to put in time into him if you're a really good player. He's a character that's quite difficult to play at the highest level, again, because some of his weaknesses are just so apparent. But to see him this low kind of surprises me. I wouldn't expect characters like, Pit to be higher than him just a few years ago, until Zachary kind of popped up out of nowhere and just started smurfing on everyone with that character. But Sephiroth is tied for third, tied for third, fourth, fifth as one of the biggest losers of this tier list. Tied with him as well is Pokemon Trainer, who went down 12 spots as well. Pokemon Trainer didn't really move in terms of what tier they were placed in. It was A- on both ends, but 12 characters got higher than him, or her. I think I said this about every single character so far, but this one does surprise me quite a bit as well. I feel like Pokemon Trainer is another one of those characters who on paper just doesn't really seem to be bad. They just do so many things well. I feel like this could be another case of just representation. Some of the characters who went above them are just getting more play by really good players. A lot of the people who used to play Pokemon Trainer that were really good kind of switched off. And again, that just might be because they're weak. But either way, Pokemon Trainer has moved down 12 spots, which is tied with Sephiroth and Pac-Man, who also went down 12 spots. And hear me out, I'm still a little surprised with this. I guess, which character are you not surprised by here? To me, I feel like Pac-Man just seems like a well-rounded character. I feel like I've been saying this too much. Maybe it's because T's been playing a lot of Kazuya. I'm not sure. But I fail to see how this character is getting that much worse. I feel like Pac-Man does pretty well into some of the higher tier characters, just super nullifies some of the lower characters in the game. So it's surprising to me that people are getting a worse opinion of him over time. But again, that might just be because T himself has not been showing us kind of how crazy Pac-Man could be. He's been playing a lot of Kazuya, or just, not entering sometimes. But that has led Pac-Man to be tied for third, fourth, fifth as our biggest loser at 12. So that was the top 5. I wanted to quickly talk about a few honorable mentions. There's Jigglypuff, who went down 10 spots. Jigs was in the C+ tier last time and is now almost the last character in C-, but Marth's fall off was even bigger, so he kind of held that spot down. I think being -10 when you're already considered pretty bad is kind of insane. To me, if you're already relatively close to the bottom, any amount of spots going even lower is kind of like hard. You have to like, people have to think you're quite a bit worse to start inching out even more spots. And the same goes with the top, right? Any movement at the top tiers is difficult, right? People have to assume your character is like significantly better to move up when you're already that good. So Jigs going down 10 spots while already being considered pretty bad is pretty insane. I also want to talk about Simon in that same regard. He only went down 5 spots, but when you're already considered one of the worst characters, to go down 5 more spots is pretty insane. It means like some of these other characters who were just considered bad might have had a few good showings, and that could be it. But it also means that like people are giving up on a character even more than they already had when that character was just considered trash. You know what I mean? So like it's pretty impressive to go down 5 spots when you're already that low. Byleth and Incineroar were both moved down 8 spots. Both these characters are kind of characters who shot up at certain points because of like one representative doing well. So it's not that surprising for either of them that over time people start seeing them lower and lower. -8 isn't a huge deal, but again, these characters weren't considered that good, so they're kind of creeping down to the lower tiers. The last honorable mention I want to talk about is Peach. She only went down 4 spots. But as I mentioned before, when you're in this like echelon of tiers, it's kind of hard to move that much, I think, especially when we're like, what, 6 years into the game with no patches. To go down 4 spots means quite a bit when you're under such a microscope. When you're in the very top tier, people are looking at like everything about these characters. So for 4 characters to pass her is pretty crazy. I don't know if the characters who passed her are just seen as better, or people think Peach herself like has a weakness that they weren't considering beforehand. So I do think that's worth mentioning that she moved down 4 spots, even though again, she's still S-, so she's not struggling. Okay, so let's talk about the characters who had the biggest glow ups in the past year. At number 1, moving up 21 spots, we have Luigi. Now, this one does not surprise me at all. We have Raru and Luigi both just showing how crazy this character is, and there's more players too. I mentioned this in some of the other videos I made. Luigi is a character who can just kill you when he touches you, and then as he's being optimized, the way these combos start are just off more moves and more scenarios. It's kind of insane to me that he's not even a top tier, I'm going to be honest. I feel like he probably has just such terrible matchups that it doesn't make sense. But a character who can just, I feel like even more so, people used to call Luigi base roster Kazuya, but I feel like even more so than Kazuya, he just gets these kill confirms off the most random hit. You get hit by like a fucking fair, okay? And you might just die. So to me, it's no surprise that Luigi has moved up so much. I would not be surprised if he continues to move up. Even though 21 spots in a year with no patches is an insane glow up, and I'm still not sure he's done. So that's kind of crazy for Luigi. The second biggest glow up is Olimar, who went up 17 spots. Olimar was in the B+ tier, and he is shot to the top of the A tier in the A+ section. I forgot to mention it, but Luigi pretty much did the same thing. The amount of characters these two passed is insane. I'm not that surprised with Olimar either, but I do find it more surprising than Luigi. But when you think about it, it does make sense. You have a really good representative in Shuton. Candle has also done quite well, and it just makes sense when you think about the character. Olimar offers a lot of control. He just kind of seems consistent. There's not like a huge flaw in his game, I think. So as good players kind of master the character, it's no surprise that he just feels harder to fight for a lot of people. And Olimar went up +17. This next character was just one lower with +16, and that is Hero. I think a big part of this is Beast Mode Paul showing off how crazy the character can be. Hero went from being a B- character to the middle of A, and I think this is a pretty good spot for him. He's a character who's like inherently not the most reliable because he does rely on RNG to a certain extent. That being said, he's also just good, like almost no matter what you get to an extent. So I think A, like the middle of A is a good spot for him. If I had to guess, I don't expect him to move in a crazy amount direction up or down from here. This seems like a good spot for a character who's like overall pretty solid, but has some weaknesses and inherently relies on RNG to an extent. I find it hard for him to move a crazy amount up unless there was some like insane tech, but the character's a little too solid to move down either. This is a great spot for Hero, and 16 spots is insane in such a short amount of time. Good shit to Beast Mode Paul, honestly. I feel like he's carrying a lot of that. And I personally, like when Hero came out, I thought to myself, I'm gonna hate fighting this character ever in my life. Since then, I've been mostly watching Smash, and I love watching him, so I don't care if he's not the funnest character to fight. I love watching it, so I'm all for Hero moving even more up if it happens. The next character went up 15 spots, which is crazy. We went from +17 to +16 to +15, and that is Donkey Kong. I kind of called this one in my video about the worst characters in Smash history, which I suggest you check out. Donkey Kong has been on a tear. The character himself just seems like he has some fundamental good things. Obviously, he has some fundamentally bad things, which I feel like will keep him from rising up too much, but he was definitely too low before. I do think a lot of this is carried by Donkey Kong, but it's also just a realization that DK can do some just good things. I feel like when he lost the kind of absurd stuff he had in Smash 4, people assumed, you know, he's just another slow, heavy character, but over time we've seen that he has some great stuff. even just fundamentally strong stuff. It doesn't have to be, you know, quote unquote cheesy. So the plus 15 makes sense to me here. I don't know if he'll move much more. In my opinion, he'll probably stay around B. I could see him going to B plus one day, maybe. I doubt it, but I do think this is a good spot for Donkey Kong. And our last biggest winner at plus 10 is Kirby. This is a pretty good rise for Kirby, going from D tier to C minus. That being said, being a C minus character, people still think you're quite bad, right? It is worth noting though that I think overall people have had better perspectives of characters in general. There are just less characters in D and E. The way the voting worked, people gave these characters kind of a ranking from 1 to 10. So the fact that there's less characters in D and E means characters were just kind of ranked higher on average. So people have a higher opinion of some of the worst characters. And yeah, a lot of characters escaped that D tier, like Kirby going up 10 spots. I think this is carried pretty hard by Gilu. I'm saying that 100% wrong, who took a set off MK Leo recently and has just been causing a lot of havoc, honestly. I think Kirby will not move a crazy amount. Maybe he'll move up a bit. I think Kirby does have some really good stuff about his kit, but he's also just insanely flawed, right? He's kind of stubby. He doesn't move very fast. Like, people will just camp this character the better they get at fighting him, which will probably keep him low considering how good so many characters are at camping. But it is impressive to go up 10 spots this late into the game. It's more impressive that someone was willing to kind of invest that much time into Kirby to prove that he can move up 10 spots. So we'll see if that keeps going. Okay, so for some honorable mentions, we have Falco and Toon Link, who both went up 9 spots. The kind of interesting thing I love about this is that Falco with his plus 9 is now higher than Wolf, which I would never expect when this game came out. And Toon Link is now the highest ranked Link. I don't know if that one's as surprising. I think for a while people had the conversation of Toon Link versus Young Link. But yeah, with his plus 9, he's now ranked higher than Young Link and the only Link in the A tier. But he's only Zelda character who's at least A tier or higher, right? Even Sheik's bad these days. What the hell? Sakurai, please help this franchise in Smash Bros. Either way, plus 9 this late into the game, like I said before, is pretty impressive. I think Falco is kind of riding that Luigi tier. Nowhere near to the same extent, but his punish game is just getting so good that he is becoming a threat, and a lot of people are trying not to interact with him very much. The last two HMs I want to mention are not huge jumps, but as I mentioned in the last section, any jump at all in these tiers is pretty insane. And the first one is Kazuya, who's plus 4. Again, plus 4 is not a huge jump, but it moved him from A plus to the middle of S, which is pretty crazy. And any jump at all, like I said earlier in this tier, is very notable because these characters are under a microscope. They're being played against the best players in the world. They're getting played by the best players in the world. Kazuya is actually surprising to me because I feel like I see him less, especially now that Riddles has been kind of killing it in Street Fighter 6. We've seen less Kazuya at the top level. Some people are still playing him for sure, but I feel like it's weird that I feel like I've seen him less, but his opinion has kind of went up pretty high for like a character at this high up in the list. So yeah, it's pretty insane to me that he went up 4 spots despite not really like winning more, in my opinion. I mean, maybe he has. I should go back and check. Maybe people are so traumatized by getting 0 death by Luigi that they just remembered Kazuya does that too, and they inherently gave him a higher score even though he hasn't been showing up. I don't know. Either way, plus 4 this late into the game is pretty nice. And the last honorable mention, he only went up plus 1, which is not a big deal at all, but it put him in a new tier, which is Snake. Snake was the 4th best character who was put in the middle of S, and he's now considered the 3rd best character in S+. To me, this is absolutely insane. I think Snake is a fantastic character. He's crazy, has so much good things about him. I don't see how like Steve and Snake can be in the same tier. That's just my opinion, but he is really good, so I'm not surprised at all that he's being moved up and up over time. I was a big proponent of this character always being insane, but didn't really have the top level representation early into the game. These days Hurt is just kind of making a lot of people look silly, so this is no surprise at all. Of course, because Snake went up, Game & Watch went down from his number 3 spot, but Game & Watch was never considered in that same tier with Sonic and Steve. I still think Game & Watch is a little overrated, not a whole lot. He still deserves to be an S tier character for sure, but I think he has a little more obvious flaws than some of the other characters, but I don't know. Either way, at most I would move him like 1 or 2. Either way though, those are the biggest changes from the last tier list to this one. Let me know what you guys think about these changes. Are there characters who you're really surprised to see change so dramatically? Are there characters who you thought would change way more? And how is your character looking these days? Are they better than you thought when you first picked them up years ago, or are they much worse? Let me know in the comments below. I love talking about these kind of things. There will be more Smash videos to come. Let me know if there's anything you particularly want to see from me in terms of Smash meta or whatnot. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, I appreciate a like, comment, and subscription. Stay beautiful, my friends. I'll see you in the next one.